Hello, everyone, and welcome on to your Thursday night edition of the tr.ee podcast. Yes, this is your third podcast of the week already, but there's been plenty to get our teeth stuck into from a Rangers perspective, especially after last night's. I'm not quite sure how to describe that performance, JB. I would say after last night's draw away in Athens, which saw us progress through to the third qualifying round of the Champions League and also guarantees European group stage football up to the end of January. As you may have already guessed by my comment there, I'm joined by JB tonight. How are you doing, JB?
Yeah, very well. I think the nerves have finally settled from yesterday. I think we were texting yesterday offline, weren't we? And it was a long day yesterday. It felt like the season's back, and the kind of nerves were kicking in from like 12 o'clock. But no, it was just good to get it over the line, to be fair, and then progress into the next round. So yeah, no, looking forward to reflecting, and looking forward now.
Yeah, absolutely. Last night, I think, from my perspective, my worry, having done a bit of a preview on Tuesday night with Ian, and Ian suggesting that he thought Russell Martin would go with the same team that started in the first leg. That sat in my head all day yesterday in the build up to the game, thinking surely he can't. The first half we played that badly in the first leg, and we were struggling to get with no out ball whatsoever. We had no one up front that was able to hold it up. It just felt like attack wave after wave of attack, and that's exactly the team that was named, JB, and it was exactly how that first half turned out as well. That was a hard watch, that first half.
Yeah, it was we kind of seen the worst of pre-season, didn't we? And the worst of the first leg as well, all kind of wrapped up in that first 45 minutes. There was kind of zero positives to take. I watched the game back today, and albeit when you're watching a game at the time, you're a lot more emotive. So even shots that go 10 yards past the post, you kind of go and heart and mouth stuff. But when you kind of watched it back, they never really threatened other than unforced errors. So if you think about Aaron's giving the ball away, or Aaron's giving the ball away, once or twice, Tav and Jigger getting into a bit of a mess with playing out from the back. Other than that, they didn't really open us up too much in the first half. So it was just delighted to get through to half time, because it was one of them. I think if we'd have conceded prior to half time, you're then going into big chat. I'm surprised he didn't make any changes at the half. I thought he might have potentially mixed it up, because this starting 11 that he's kind of running with at the moment, it's glaringly obvious to us where things are going wrong. Okay, I've lost your voice, so I'll wait.
No, it's okay. That was my fault. That was my fault. Why do you think he is? Why do you think he is running with that starting 11? That's 2 weeks in a row. We could tell last week that it wasn't working, and so why do you think he persevered with that last night? And why do you think? So we didn't see anything different really to what we saw in the first half of the first leg.
Yeah, my only assumption is the way that he's set up will work against a poorer opposition, shall we say. So I think he's got this strategy or process that he's got in his head is almost kind of hopefully going to be built for dominating the ball in the opposition half, like we did when they went down to 10 men last week, which I know you can say, oh yeah, but they were down to 10 men. That's the type of games we're going to be up against. We're not going to be up against technically gifted footballers like we were yesterday, and against Bruges and against Middlesbrough. The team that we're going to be up against domestically, which we've all complained about for years that we haven't delivered against. I think this team, touch wood, is going to be built really well to cope with that demand, because we're going to have plenty of the ball. You can see there's patterns. Danilo dropping deep, get domestically, and then type of touches and layoffs he wants to do, I think will be quite effective domestically, but it won't be in Europe because that's not his game. You could probably go through each of them, and there's probably criticisms for everybody, and certainly in that first half yesterday. You can make excuses all you want. I think there was a lot of the players last night just not doing the basics. Now some of that could have been down to fatigue. The heat did look unbearable.
Yeah.
I'm sure the commentator said it was 44 degrees 15 minutes before kickoff. Some
Was
of
it
our
really?
lads.
I'd heard them say it's 40 degrees sort of towards the end of last week, but I didn't hear it was that
Well,
warm there.
that was just on comms, but
Yeah.
you could kind of see, you could see the players. Some of the players were melting. Do you know what I mean? I was just praying for poor Lyle Cameron on the bench and thinking that kid's gonna die. But in terms of, you could just see the players were sweating. John Souther, I think, said in one of his post-match interviews that it was the most difficult conditions he's ever played in for heat. So yeah, as you go, if you kind of reflect going through the team, I thought Butland was fantastic. I thought he stood up when we needed them to stand up.
Yeah.
I thought his kicking was really good. I know it's not his strongest point, but there was one towards the end of the game where I think might have been Jeffrey rolled it back to him, and he just pinged a 60, 70-yard ball to feet and created an attack. I remember when he first signed, one of the things he did say was he's looking forward to playing in a team where it's going to be ball dominant, because where he's been before, obviously didn't play at Man U, but it was always backs against the wall.
Yeah.
And we've seen the pluses and minuses of that from Jack Butland, because when he's busy, he's very good. And he was very good last night. He was very good in the first leg. So delighted with him. Unlucky with the goal. I was watching the game back today, and when you see the goal, I think the player's gone to square it for the striker who's running back into the box, and the way it's deflected, it's kind of gone away from goal, gone towards goal. It was a bit like a Pound Lamb version of Scott Nesbitt against Bruges in terms of funny bounce, and then it's ended up in the corner of the net. So I wasn't too critical there, but I thought Tavernier was poor. His all round play, I thought, was kind of all over the place. He done his the big pet hate that me and a few of us in the Governorship hate. Why he feels the need to take a corner on the 88th minute when
Yeah.
when you need to hold on to what you've got. And then I don't think he made it back into the right of the three position for the remaining 6 minutes of the game. Just that kind of summed him up for me, almost as if he was looking for redemption. Just get the game won, go home and sort it. But Njiga looked solid defensively. Him and Souther, I thought, defended really well. However, that these two carrying the ball out of the fence isn't
Yeah,
something I'm
I
looking
thought
forward to.
just on John, I think Jigga, you're right in terms of defensively. He looks really solid. He looks a bit nervy on the ball when he's got the ball at his feet. He looks a bit hard. I'm definitely sitting there a bit heart and mouth when he's got the ball at his feet. But John Souther, Russell Martin said after the game that he thought John Souther was excellent last night. I just didn't see that. I didn't get that feeling from watching the game. I quite like John Souther as a player. I'm not down on him or think he's a bad player or anything like that. But I just thought last night, probably at times in the first leg as well, he was giving the ball away, but I don't think he provides the right support to Max Aarons either on that left side of the defence. I just don't think because Max Aarons was at 60s and 7s at times last night, and he clearly doesn't really have that much pace, to be honest. When you saw how fast was it Palistri was the winger he was up against. It was I just didn't see a good game for John Souther last night, but I wasn't sure if the manager was just building him up a wee bit.
We'll get to Kieran Dahl in a minute and we'll talk about them comments. But I think with John Souther, he's a siege defender. I've always kind of said this. He's your Harry Maguire of Scotland. Do you know what I mean? Like, you throw a ball into the box and some big dafty needs to go and header it, he'll do it. If someone needs to put a big block in, he'll do it. Do you know what I mean? But what we can't be asking him to do, and we need to kind of address this quite quickly because it's obviously a theme that we're allowing him to do it, is for him and Njiga to be running, walking out of defence with the ball, because that's not what they're built for. They're not good at it, and if that's the style of play that. I get that there's going to be a style of play, and I get we're going to take risks, and I think in the long term will be the benefits of that, and definitely domestically taking risks on the halfway line is cool. I'm all for it. Not against European teams who are streetwise. Do you know what I mean? And I mean, the pitch didn't look great last night, but all the more reason why you don't do things that you're not good at. I don't know whether it's a plan, but if you notice when Souther and the Jigger had the ball, the midfield three seem to move away from the play and almost then don't offer up a pass, which then means that the centre halves are then having to find the front three. And the front three then need to come come deep. Danilo, as I touched on earlier, was kind of responsible for that, and that's not his game. Finlay Curtis, you can't expect too much of him. Kieran Dowell is the hide and seek champion of 2025 in terms of if there's a ball to be played, he'll stand behind the defender as opposed to running to 5 yards to try and get a touch. He's just not built to play for Rangers. I actually think he's a good player. I think that I agree with Russell Martin in that regard. He's got qualities, but it's not qualities that are going to work at Rangers. He's the type of player, I think I might have said that on another pod. He's a great player if you're 3-0 up and you bring him on. And I think he'll probably chip in with double figures in terms of goals and assists because he's got ability, and he showed that when he was at Birmingham last year. You could just see he looks petrified. He wants rid of the ball as soon as it comes to him. He's not particularly brave. He won a couple of good headers last night, and you always want him to do well because he's not. You can kind of see from his whole persona he's not comfortable. But again, don't want to turn this into a Kieran Dowell bashing pod because you could spend an hour, couldn't you? But Aarons, as you touched on there, I thought he's not comfortable on the left hand side, and if that is the manager's solution for the season, if that's what he was purchased for, it's all right us saying he was purchased to play right back. Why isn't he playing right back? Yeah. Was he? Do you know what I mean? Was the conversation had? You got to play every week, but you're playing every week at left back because we've got James Tavernier at right back now. He's going to have to be very careful, Russell Martin, in terms of the way that he handles that situation.
Do you think it's more out of necessity just now and a wee bit, because there's quite a few players that are playing out of position, it's more square pegs and round holes because we have to rather than because these are the players that he wants to start and he's going to find a way to get them to start no matter what?
Potentially. I mean, the only challenge that I probably have to that is I don't think Jeffy let us down too much last season on the European stage. I think where he did let us down, I mean, there was the one against Man United away where he kind of switched off, but it was a world-class cross. It was a good cross and a clever run from Fernandes that night. But in Europe, in the main, he offers you something. He offers you an outlet. I remember Nice away was fantastic, in terms of ball carrying and stuff. And he was good. And then just to finish through the team, I thought the midfield three, I like it on paper. And I'm interested to see how that works domestically. In Europe, it doesn't look like it's got enough in terms of, I don't know whether it's not necessarily the personnel, but the way that we're using them. I like to see Raskin everywhere. Do you know what I mean? I like to see him charging down the right back. I like to see him in the box winning headers. I like to see him picking the ball up off the back four. But he seems to be a little bit isolated in the left-hand side. And then when he's got it, he shows his quality. Diamandi, for me, isn't influencing the game enough. Europe is always where he looks fantastic. He looks a standout. Last 2 games, he's done okay in patches, the odd turn, the odd good pass, the odd threaten to get forward. And then the front three, just for completeness, I thought weren't really involved too much. I thought Curtis finished the first half well, won us a few corners, showed endeavour, and Kieran Dowell spoke about, and Danilo's not built to play a lone striker role, so that was kind of the starting 11. It was all the game. The first half panned out how we all thought it was going to pan out, and it was almost a case of if we'd have gone out and we'd have been brilliant, I think we'd have been more shell shocked. Whereas everybody on that pitch played to kind of what we were expecting them to do. Which, if we were expecting that, surely the management team and the coaching staff were expecting something similar, and it was just a case of riding our luck and seeing where we got to.
Yeah, I think the main thing for me in terms of how we're playing and how it's been is we're not maintaining. I'm going to say this and then contradict it with a stat from last night. We're not maintaining possession. It seems we're giving the ball away in dangerous areas, and that's 2 things that are going to kill you in games against better teams, and that's where we're going to run into some real trouble, especially if we get through to even the playoff round of this Champions League qualifiers. You come up against some good teams, the likes of Benfica, for example. If you start giving them the ball 30 yards from goal, they're going to start taking some chances. But at one stage, I think it was nearly at half time, I looked at the possession stats and we'd had 60% possession. And that confused me because it didn't pass the eye test that was what was happening. But Panathinaikos, I can't remember who it was in our group chat, was talking about Panathinaikos are just so direct. and they know that's what's working against us.
Yeah.
But again, that then gives me worry when we go to domestic games against teams who are just going to be direct. That's all they're going to do. They're not going to try and play around us. They're not going to try and play through us. They're just going to go straight for the jugular every single time. And it was, I think it was just we struggled with the directness that Panathinaikos had. I'm just very grateful that they were toothless up front.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I think where that it was a bit of a false stat. I think the possession, if I'm being perfectly honest. I think where we have, because we had so much possession, I think our pass completion rate was something like 86%. Do you know what I mean? So we were really keeping the ball against their. I think I'm sure when I read last night they were about 79. So they were giving the ball away a lot, like cheap balls, kicking the ball out of play quite a lot and stuff. But they did have 20 shots. Do you know what I mean? And now some of them were pot shots, as I touched on earlier, a bit more relaxed than when you're watching the game back. But it almost felt at times it was a matter of when rather than if they were going to score. And that's fine. I do fear that this season is going to be, this team is going to be really good domestically. I do genuinely feel that. I think we're going to have better players than everybody in the league. And then there's obviously a team on the other side of the city that's going to be very challenging. Do you know what I mean? I don't think they're not all firing. I don't think they're going into the season and their fans aren't going in, by the sounds of it, on kind of the best of hopes. But domestically, the majority of our games with this style, and you can see little snippets of it in terms of the passing and the movements and stuff, then I'm hoping domestically it's just going to be a case of, yes, this works. My only concern with games like last night, we haven't been clinical for years. We haven't got the personnel to be clinical. So 3 shots on target last night, which would have been Gassama, Dess's, and maybe one of Danilo's shots just before the time scored. That's pathetic. Do you know what I mean? Against a team that's not very good. I think we more played them up as a difficult situation as opposed to them being a good team. They had a couple of standout players. I thought the big captain up top, he's one to keep an eye on. I think he'll probably go on to do well and stuff, but they're not a great side. And it'll be interesting to keep an eye on them in Europe to see how they get on. But it's more you're more playing against the name, and you're more playing against the difficult environment and situation. Which again, we've got to applaud the players for coming through that. But I do think the stats potentially painted a false picture because I say a lot of the chances they have were from our own mistakes, and even the saves that Butler made, I'd have been disappointed if he didn't make them. Do you know what I mean? So it's going to be interesting to see how he plans out the next few weeks and what the next 3 or 4 signings look like. I'll be surprised, or probably disappointed. It's probably the right word, if we don't bring at least one in before 11 o'clock, before that squad gets named, because then you've still got 2. You can obviously change 2 then before next Tuesday. You're probably not going to be throwing somebody into a debut next Tuesday, but you've then got 2 weeks before the return leg, which is the big one. So if you're going to bring in, say for example, a left-sided centre half, you probably want them in today, and then they get to experience Motherwell on Saturday, whether even it's just in the stands, and then they've got a few days training. You then go into Tuesday at Ibrox. They've got a chance to potentially make an appearance there. And then you've then got a home game against Dundee. Again, hopefully everyone's up on a high. And then you've got that huge return leg then, which will be in a 15,000 capacity stadium in Czech Republic. We still allowed to call it that, but yeah. So I would have liked to have seen 1 or 2 coming in today. And then, as I say, having that safety net, because I don't think this squad will be able to compete in Europe.
What do you, and I think it's probably optimistic to think that there'll be any signing announcements at this stage, given we've not heard any real rumours today. I guess Mikey Moore would be the only one that you're looking at that could potentially get over the line in time. But in terms of over the first 2 competitive games that we've seen under Russell Martin, what do you feel like, as a fan, what do you feel like you've learned about this team and how he wants to play? JB's disappeared. So I guess from my perspective, what I have learned is that we're going to keep playing the way that Russell Martin wants us to play, no matter who we're up against and no matter who we are, what the situation is. Going away to a difficult place like last night, I think that was really a challenging atmosphere, and one that we knew would be a challenging atmosphere. And he didn't relent on the style of play he wanted. He didn't change the passing out from the back. Playing the ball into midfielders in tight positions and expecting them to deal with it and to continue and move the play. So I think that's going to be a really interesting thing, especially as we move through the gears in terms of the levels of teams we're playing. Even when we come up against Celtic towards the end of August, that's going to be a really interesting one week up against your back, JB.
Sorry, I was about to go into a sneezing fit and I didn't want to didn't want anyone in the splash zone. So yeah.
What do you over the last two games, the first two competitive games, Russell Martin, what do you feel like you've learned as a fan about him and this team?
Yeah, I think I've learned if I had hair, I wouldn't have had it by the end of the season. I'll be watching that hairline for you as the season goes on. It's a stress, isn't it? I think we were pre-warned that this is what it was going to be like. Again, I keep jumping back to the point. I'll judge him once I've seen a few domestic games. Do you know what I mean? We probably need to see 6 or 7 domestic games to see how the style and the play is going to work in that environment. We've brought him in to get us back competing domestically. Otherwise we would have went for a European coach. Do you know what I mean? If we wanted another Phil Clement to Gio, I was going to say Pedro, then that'd be a terrible example. But if we wanted somebody to come in and build a team for us to compete in Europe, I think we probably would have gone down a slightly different route. He's going to try and play this similar style of football against everyone. I just hope that he doesn't get his fingers too burnt, because if we were up against a clinical opposition over the last 2 legs, we would have been punished. Domestically, we probably won't come up against many clinical teams. It'll probably be a little bit more physical. And that's no disrespect to the rest of the league, because there are some talented players out there. I reference Martin Boyle quite a lot, because I just think he's the type of player that he will be licking his lips against this Rangers team, because there's going to be loads of space in behind. There's going to be loads to run into. But my biggest takeaway from last night that I was absolutely delighted with was when he went to the back 3 for the last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I thought, you know what, that's him showing a little bit of nous to go, right, nothing silly here, lads. Let's tighten it up. Let's put players into the positions that they prepare to play. And all of a sudden, Max Aarons is hitting the byline on the right-hand side. Tavernier isn't giving the ball away. Jeffy's bombing on down the left-hand side and giving you real good balance. So all of a sudden you're going, oh, right, this looks good. I've always championed a kind of 5 at the back, certainly away from home in Europe. I just think with the personnel that we've got and the fight and the grit that we tend to have in Europe, I always think that would kind of suit us. I can't think of too many games, even jumping back to the Gerrard era, where the game was won on the wing. Moments of magic from Ryan Kent aside, everything tends to be done through really good hard work and making the space and counter-attacking and stuff. It was never kind of getting to the byline and picking out. That was never been our style. So I think that's something that I was really pleased about. I thought the substitution he made yesterday were bang on at the right times and when we needed them. Again, you could have changed 10 of the 11 probably at half time, but obviously stuck with it. But I think this team is still 3 or 4 starters away from where it needs to be.
I think my biggest concern is that when we're in possession, I don't think I've seen us once look entirely comfortable as a team with the ball at our feet, and that we know what we're going to be doing, that we know where people are going to be, that we know what our next move is, that we're going to keep a hold of the ball. Even I don't think I felt comfortable watching us.
Yeah.
But I don't think the team have looked comfortable on the pitch in themselves, knowing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, it's probably difficult to judge for them first 2 games, because let's have it right, where the players' bodies probably are, they were the equivalent of 2 friendlies. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there was a lot of talk about us not playing enough friendlies. Well, if you look at it from a positive perspective, that was 2 big friendlies in the bank. that we've just got out the way. So if that had been your pre-season, you played Panathinaikos twice, you played Middlesbrough, you played Club Brugge, you played the behind closed doors games, all of a sudden it puts a slightly different lens on it. I think with the Ibrox game, there's obviously the intensity and the pressure of the home fans. Thought the home, I know I was sitting with you for that one, but I thought the fans that night were fantastic. So the players probably had that big lift and the adrenaline and everything else that goes with that. There would have been some nerves in there as well. There were certain players grew into the game at that first leg, and the second leg yesterday. Some players finished strong. I think Raskin finished really strong. Gassama when he come on finished really strong. Thought big De Giga at the back finished strong. So I think we're just going to have to bear with it. I think is going to kind of be the message. But that all says we have to win on Saturday. That's kind of a non-negotiable. Do you know what I mean? So to your original point around style of play and something, yeah, I'm not really seeing it. I know we've seen the fantastic goals with Max Adams against. Sorry, the Max Adams started off against Panathinaikos at home, and it fell to Gassam to obviously a fantastic finish. If we're going to see that every week, then I'm all aboard. Do you know what I mean? But that was our left back picking the ball up at right back.
Yeah.
And then, do you know what I mean? So there probably was a bit of an overload at that point. But I think in terms of Saturday's that's where the proof's going to be. And it's going to be really interesting to see with what type of formation that he goes with and how he approaches that.
Are you excited about Saturday? Obviously, it's started by a new season. We've already kind of dipped our toes in it, I guess, with the fact we've played Panathinaikos in these two competitive games. But are you excited about domestic action being back and it's really full throttle from here on out for Rangers until, I guess, end of January, really, if we're honest?
Yeah, it didn't dawn on me, to be honest, until I had it in my head that we were going to have a week off between Motherwell and Dundee. I just subconsciously kind of put everything to kind of the back of my mind because there was that much focus on last night. And then it was almost a case of it's going to be Motherwell, Plzen, Dundee, Plzen, and then St Mirren away.
Is it St Mirren away then Alloa? I can't remember the order.
St Mirren away and then Alloa. Okay, yeah. So there's probably a couple in there, but the St Mirren game, there's a chance we'll probably get postponed because we've got the option to kind of cancel that. Now, I'd be very careful with without thinking too far ahead, a few weeks ahead. I'd be very careful as what we did there because psychologically, I don't want there to be a gap and go, well, you've got to win your 3 games in hand and then you'll be all right. I don't think that would suit us. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think. As a fan, you've got to. I think that's kind of what the start of the season's all about. But I'm also petrified at the same breath because I don't genuinely know what we're going to see.
Yeah.
I don't think that 11, the other that started on Saturday, if that's the 11 that started last night, if that's the 11 that starts on Saturday, I'm fully expecting the game's going to be won from players from the bench, which I don't think is a great starting position. I want to be in a position, and again, it was the second time I've mentioned them across the city. They win games in the first half. They win games sometimes in the first 30 minutes. And then all of a sudden, then you can then bring your Dowls on and your Bajramis and everything else. We've got to come out. We've got to come out the traps on Saturday. We've got to kill any hope that because it's their first game of the season as well. Do you know what I mean? It'll be a decent crowd. I know they've had a couple of League Cup games and a couple of friendlies and different bits and bobs, but it's there. You'd like to think it'll be a decent crowd. I mean, I was looking at their signings earlier, just try and get a bit of a feel as to any business they've done. Do you know what I mean? They brought guys in from Vulborg, Burton Albion, internal promotion. Oh, sorry, internal promotion. Do you know what that is? Internal promotion. And Greenock Morton, that's ChatGPT after signings. It's misspelled everything. I love that one. But do you know what I mean? So the caliber of players that these teams are bringing in and around us shouldn't be any type of threat. But yeah, we just need to go there on Saturday and win. It's a non-negotiable.
I think it is, but I would be very surprised if we're not seeing the likes of Gassama playing from the start. He was tremendous last night again. He's clinical in front of goal when he gets a chance. He made no mistake last night at all either. So I think he'll play, and then you're looking more to what new guys Mikey Moore came in today or whatever. Does he get a bit of a chance? Outside of that, you're struggling to see where the changes come from. We maybe have Dessers in front of Danilo, but Danilo's played more games, more minutes, scored more goals on pre-season. So then you're like, well, is he the man that's going to start? Igaman's not going to be the one that plays. So really, there's not many places you could change from last night, really, if we look at it. I guess I'm the only one.
We're really missing a Czerny, aren't we? We're missing somebody that you can kind of hang your hat on to go, okay, if we're not playing well, he'll do something. I don't think there's anybody in that team that I'll kind of look through that will go, they'll get us back into this. They'll do a moment of magic. Gassama is the one who's kind of showing that I think we're pinning all hopes on him at the moment. I think Asgard would have been one of them players based on what we've heard and seen of him so far. By all accounts, from the snippets that you get from the training ground, that he's been absolutely fantastic, and kind of he just looks a step above. But sod's law, he's not. We don't know whether he's going to be available yet. I'm hoping that was just precaution. Do you know what I mean? In terms of Russell Martin wouldn't have been stupid. He'd have known that this was a big week ahead. Yeah. So in terms of if there's an opportunity for, I'm not saying to say rest players, but if there's any doubt at all, don't put them on a 5-hour flight one way, 5-hour flight back. The intense heat. Let them get it out. Keep them at home. Do some training. Get themselves ready, and hopefully ready for going into Saturday. The only other one was Igaman. I think he's one that we don't know what's happening with that situation, but he's one that we could desperately do with on Saturday. I'd be absolutely delighted if we looked at that starting 11 on Saturday, and we seen a Gassama, we seen a Asgard, we seen a Igaman. Throw them three in straight away to last night's team, and straight away you're looking at three guys that are probably going to hit double figures in goals if they stay fit and stay with us. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting. I'm looking forward to the team news, which are 5:30 kickoff or something. So it'll be a long day, that one as well. So
it will be, yeah. But the season will be well and truly underway, and very much looking forward to that, because I'm feeling really positive about Rangers this season, despite the negativity I've brought to this podcast in many areas after the last couple of games. But I think the real positive is that we came through that tie. No, we didn't just scrape through. We came through it with a 2-goal margin on aggregate, which I think probably shows it was much more comfortable than it felt as a fan watching it during the games. But I also am encouraged by what that means we can do going forward. We're going into this next round of the qualifying, where we've got a team that you would probably fancy your chances against if you come up against them in the Europa League, for example. So there's no reason why we couldn't do that. We can't overcome them. Then you're into the tricky space, but you've got an extra £5 million in your pocket and you're guaranteed group stage football in the Europa League anyway. So I think on a European front, we're taking a really positive step. The fact that Russell Martin's got off the mark with a win and a draw against what is tough opposition and tough circumstances with a team that's not even half-baked, I don't think, is really positive from that perspective, because if it had gone the other way, then that will start to spiral very quickly. Then we're going into first game of the season. We've tended to drop points in the first game of the season the last few years. So if we can get off to a winning start this time around, and there's no reason why we shouldn't, then it'll be full steam ahead and start to build up towards a team that can really make a challenge on several fronts. But I think we'll call it a day there for the podcast. We're over the half hour. These half hours go quickly when you've got lots to talk about. So my thanks to JB for joining us. My thanks to everyone else for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, please do drop a like. It helps us massively. And also make sure you subscribe to tr.ee YouTube channel. Approximately 50% of the people who watch us aren't subscribed, so make sure that you do. You won't miss out on any of the content we've got coming up, and there's plenty of that as we move through this season. But thank you very much, everyone, for listening. Till next time. Goodbye.